An intense evening at Tuesday's Rockford City Council meeting. Several people voiced their concerns on the city's efforts regarding the Israel and Hamas war.
WIFR's Anthony Ferretti was in the middle of this debate and shares concerns from city leaders and the community.
More than 24 people with the group Rockford for Palestine packed Rockford City Council chambers Tuesday, demanding leaders vote on city support for a ceasefire to the war in Gaza.
We worked together to create a proclamation that supports our local residents as they navigate the tremendous challenges regarding the conflict in the Middle East.
Rockford Mayor Tom McNamara, Muslim Association of Greater Rockford President Shahid Nazir, and Bina Wing with Temple Beth El signed a proclamation as a symbol of the city's solidarity and commitment to supporting Rockford residents with ties to Israel and Palestine.
There should be a peaceful resolution to this conflict, and people should come together.
We're grateful to put these words together, and I'm honored to sign my name to it.
Mayor McNamara, this proclamation is shameful.
This proclamation is met with protests from several attendees, 2 of which had to be escorted out of council chambers by police.
We need to pivot our society away from one of awareness, but one to acceptance and action.
We demand that you support action against colonial occupation, violence, and oppression to liberate Palestine.
McNamara says he's had conversations with Rockfordians to learn more and to lean into people who represent large communities within the city before crafting the proclamation.
It came forward that there are people in Rockford that are hurting. We as a community stand with them in this really most difficult and trying of times. And what we can do here locally is to be as supportive and caring and loving for our own residents.
McNamara says he asked each city council member twice about a possible ceasefire resolution if it were to come forward. He says you need 8 votes to pass in council, and there were not 8 votes.
Thank you, Anthony. In response to claims of tax dollars being used to fund the war, McNamara says those at the local level don't have a say when it comes to how federal money is spent.
The Israeli